Next year we'll have to have bigger tent. One hopes that you've had a pleasant week, instructive learning and exploring into oneself the immense depth and width of life. We are going to ask several fundamental questions this morning. Perhaps some of you have not asked these questions, and it may sound rather extravagant or nothing to do with our daily life, or that is merely theoretical. The speaker does not in any way indulge in theories, ideologies, or any sense of beliefs, dogmas, and all that business. First of all, what is it to be honest? Really, deeply honest. We are honest to some, that is, conformity, which we call honesty, to some fictitious belief, faith, or ideologies. But honesty seems to be to one where there is total integrity. That integrity is not mediocrity. Mediocrity, the meaning of that word, according to the dictionary, is one who goes halfway up the hill and never goes to the top of the hill. Perhaps we go to the top of the hill in science, in all the technological world, but we never go to the very top of it, top of our own inquiry, of our own understanding, and find out for ourselves the depth and the beauty of our own lives. Where there is integrity, that is, a wholeness, a sense of not completeness, but a sense of non-fragmented way of life. Out of that comes great honesty, unyielding, not easily persuaded or dissuaded, but living a daily life in which there is this holistic way of conducting oneself, morality, and all that business. We were going to talk this morning over together, as we have talked about several other factors of life like conflict, whether conflict could ever end in our daily life. And we also talked about fear, sorrow yesterday morning, and the nature of, and the depth and the strength of love, compassion and intelligence. We ought to talk over this morning together. What is death? What is immortality? And what is continuity? In the understanding of all that, we have to really delve very, very deeply into the nature of time and thought, which we've been doing from the beginning of these talks. Time, we said, is the past modifying itself in the present, and the future is the present having its roots in the past, continuing, which is the future. Right? So the future is now. That is, we have evolved, according to the biologists and scientists, we have been on this earth as human beings, evolving for 40, 50,000 years. During that long interval of time, during that duration, we have accumulated a great deal of information, knowledge, experience, and technologically we have advanced in the most extraordinary way. But inwardly, psychologically, subjectively, we are very primitive, barbarous. English weather. And we have not fundamentally changed. We are violent, brutal, competitive, terribly aggressive, and so on. And unless one deeply understands, not merely theoretically, but the nature of time, when and what is time. Is time a continuity? I am this, I will be. Is time, when is time? Understand? Is there time in the very act of doing? Is there time in the very action of life? You plant a seed in the ground and it grows, flowers, bears fruit and dies. And while that seed is growing, moving, living, there is no concept of time. It's only we human beings have the concept of time. And when we are doing something completely, holistically, without any sense of fragmented outlook or behavior, the doing, in that act of doing, there is no time. Haven't you noticed all this? As you are sitting here and listening, unfortunately or fortunately, to the speaker, as you are listening very attentively, which I hope one is doing, this attention has no time. Right? It's only time comes into being when you say, what is he talking about? I don't quite understand. Or I'm making tremendous effort to understand. Then time comes into being. But when there is actual listening, seeing very clearly, then there is no time at all. And understanding this, we're going to inquire together. The speaker means together, all of us together. Into the nature, into depth, and the beauty of death. When one uses the word beauty, what do we mean by that word? What is beauty to you? Because we are saying beauty is truth, like love is truth. What is beauty? A beautiful person, a beautiful painting, great mountain that is immovable, full of snow valleys, shadows, and the deep blue depth of a vast valley. The great paintings, the ancient sculptures. And when we look at them, we say how marvelously beautiful they are. Is beauty something in the beholder, in the observer, in the seer? Or is beauty when the observer is not? Do you understand? Are we meeting each other? Are you all... Have you had enough? Enough is enough? Because in our life, daily life, there is so little beauty. We want to have a beautiful body, beautiful face, and to do all kinds of things to bring that beauty about. Exercise, so-called yoga. Can we go into that word a little bit? In the ancient days, yoga was taught only to very, very few. And in doing yoga, other factors entered into it. A meditation. In the ancient days, I'm not talking now of what is considered yoga. And it was an act of dedication to find out what is truth, what is way of living according to that truth, and so on. But now yoga has become a commercialized affair. If you can't do anything better, you're going to teach yoga. Those people who are experts at it are accumulating money the whole commercial process. So yoga is something that demands a great deal of attention in the old days, great deal of self-observation, self-recollectedness, and so on. Not just having a beautiful body. So, what is beauty? We're asking. When you compare two great paintings, the comparison between that painter and that painter, or that poem or the other poem, this book or that, what is actually going on in one's brain? You are comparing, you are judging, you are evaluating. Some have said Keats is the greatest poet ever lived. Or if he had lived longer, he would be far greater than Shakespeare, and so on. And when you put aside all the paintings in the world, in museums and in your own house and so on, and when you see the great mountains with their snow and against a blue sky in the morning light, there is a certain quality of silence, certain quality of breathless adoration. And the perception of that immovable, the deep valleys, the lakes and the rivers, and the forests. When you see all that, the very greatness of it drives away our petty little life. Maybe for a minute or for a few seconds, when the self is not, beauty is. Do you understand? Are we together in this? When you look at all those mountains, rivers, and the beautiful architecture, or read a poem, some part of the ancient literature, the Old Testament, or the Upanishads and so on, to observe all that without thought, without the me interfering with your perception. Then there is that quality of immense beauty which is not put together by thought. And to come upon that beauty is to inquire whether the self, the me, the persona, all the characteristic tendencies and all the troubles, pain and anxieties and load, all that, can all that be put aside? Not make that which is great, make you put everything aside. Then that greatness becomes merely a toy. But if one can put all that aside the very nature of the self, the psyche. Then there is that immense beauty, which is really timeless existence. And let's go to something else, which is, what is death? We are going to inquire together, what is death? And also we are going to talk over together, what is it that continues? And the continuity is a movement of time. Right? Sorry. So we must ask also, is there anything permanent in us, in the world, outside of us? Is there anything imperishable that cannot be destroyed, that is endlessly permanent? Man has asked this question from the most ancient of times, because he sees around him everything in a flux, everything changing, gaining, losing, being destroyed and put together again. And we also see in ourselves changing, not only biologically, but psychologically. We're all moving a little bit by bit, moving, changing. Not fundamentally changing, but little. So seeing all that, this constant change, dying and being reborn, one asks, is there anything permanent, lasting? And what is that thing that lasts? Is it a continuity of what we are? You understand? Does this all interest you? Don't just say yes. That's no fun. But if you are really interested in this, because it has to do with one's life, one's daily life. And is there anything in one's daily life that's permanent? There's always at the end of that so-called continuity, there is death. One has lived 90 years, or 50 years, or 10 years. And during those 80, 90 years, there's been a long continuity of memory, continuity of activity, labor, striving, aspiring, hoping to make oneself more excellent in some skill or other, or inwardly, psychologically, to find something that is not always changing. So we see all this. An ancient oak dies. Everything seems to come to an end, die. And observing all this, one asks oneself, as I hope you're asking yourself, is there permanent something that will last, that will have its roots in some place that will always grow, will always be immense, permanent? Right? Don't you ask all these questions? Or I'm asking for you. And so we're asking, what is continuity? What is it that continues in our daily life? Is it not memory? A series of associations and a continuity exists also between when one thought is silent for the moment, another thought arises. There is an interval between those two thoughts. And in that interval, we observe a sense of timeless existence for a second. But that interval between two thoughts is still thought in absence. Thought then is absent between those two intervals, but is still two thoughts. We're going to all this too. Is it too complicated? Probably it is. Is continuity immortality? Because it's one of the things man has sought, immortality. That which is beyond death. And like the ancient books, like the Upanishads, the Vedas, and the Hebrew literature, the ancient, and the Bible, Shakespeare, Keats, they are in a way immortal. They are going to last when you and I pop off. They'll be there. Is that immortality, the name? All the things associated with that name? So what is immortal? Mortality, we know what that means. Man dying, human beings coming to an end. And human beings have asked this question. Is there immortality? A state in which there is no death at all? Not a continuity, but because continuity implies time. And where there is time, there is death. Where there is immortality, if there is such thing, then there is no death at all. There is no ending or beginning. Are you going to all this? I'll go into it. If you're interested, we'll take the journey. If you're not, it doesn't matter. I hope you are comfortably seated. What is death? Does it mean to die? And that is an absolute certainty that we're all going to die. And what does that mean? One has continued from childhood till the moment of death. Continued with one's thoughts, with one's ideas, or new set of ideas, thoughts, trouble, pain, anxiety, loneliness, and all the travail of life. That's what we call continuity. And in that process, time is a factor. And when we die, all the Asiatic world believes, at least some of them, majority of them, including India and so on, this continuity will continue after death, which is called rebirth, reincarnation. And that's a very comforting idea. What you sow, you reap. If you are not good in this life, then in next life you pay for it. Or you pay for it now. Right? Cause and effect. Causation separate, as though it was separate from the effect. We are saying causation has in it inherently effect. There are not two separate things. I wonder if you get all this. This is not philosophy. It's not some kind of exotic nonsense. You can see one's own life. If you do something ugly, it has its own reward, or its own pain. If you do something correctly, without the self, then that brings about its own goodness. So continuity is a form of causation, effect, and the effect becomes the cause. And so it's a chain. And we're asking, what is death? Biologically, when the brain has not sufficient blood, breath and so, it decays very rapidly. And that is called death, by physical death. Either that is brought about through some kind of disease, natural old age, or some accident. We acknowledge that, but that's inevitable. But we say, I have gathered all this experience. All my life I've worked. All my life I've tried to do this and that. And what's the good of it all if I come to an end of all that? Don't you ask these questions? So we have to ask, what is it to end? To end something in which there is no continuity. You understand? To end. All right. One is attached. There's no question about it. Attached to an idea, to a book, to a saying, to your money, to your wife, or to some ideal, and so on. One is deeply attached. We're not saying it's right or wrong. One is attached. Death comes along and says, sorry. Cuts that attachment. And we want that attachment to continue. And without it, when there is freedom from attachment, we feel a bit lost. So we are frightened of death because it may end everything that you have. Following? And one asks, what have you? At the end of 90 years, I'm asking this of myself. And you must be asking of yourself, what is it that you have? A house, a bank account if you are lucky enough or unlucky enough, a wife, a husband, the pleasure of sex, and all the conflict of one's life. Actually, what has won in your life? What have you? And if one was very, very honest, you need to have a house. You need to have a shelter, food, clothes. That's natural, normal. Otherwise, what have you? A series of memories, right? A bundle of memories, and nothing else. In those bundle of memories, there are all aspirations, wanting, not wanting, seeking God, all that. Or not seeking God, or saying, there is only this. That's pleasure, money, power. The mundane activities of one's life, that's all one has. And death comes along and says, you can't carry it with you, it all has to come to an end. End of that, end of all your memories, all your experiences, all the things one has struggled through life to accumulate. When a scientist, great scientist, not employed by the government, but free of governments, those scientists, they have accumulated extraordinary amount of knowledge, skill, great penetration to matter, what is questioning, what is matter, what is energy, and so on. They too die, like us. And at the end of their life, what have they? And the totalitarian dictators, what is going on in Russia and all the dictatorships in the world, what have they? Do you understand? We want what we have, which is memories, to continue. Right? And when those memories come to an end, which is the fact of life, which is death, and knowing all that, one is frightened. You want to know what happens after. And you want to know what happens afterwards according to your already existing knowledge. Right? You understand? You follow this? You are adding more knowledge by asking what is there when one dies. All that one wants is more knowledge, more certainty of knowledge. And knowledge is limited. You understand? Because knowledge is based on experience which is limited, and knowledge is memory, and so thought is limited. So we keep going around in that circle. And is there an end to all this? And that is death. And someone asks, is it possible to live with death? Not commit suicide and all that silly stuff, but to live with something, live with an absolute fact. The absolute fact is that one is going to die. And that death means the ending of knowledge, of memories. So can one live with death and not keep the two apart? You understand? You follow all this? What does it mean to live with death? What does it mean to own nothing? May have money, a wife, children, but to hold and wanting that which you have held to go on. And death means you hold nothing. Can one live a life in this world, living and death together? That means living and dying every day. Oh, come on, thanks. So it means never, never becoming something. Becoming something psychologically, which is so-called psychological evolution. In that there is time, a continuity, and the memory held in the brain. of course. And living with death means that which has been accumulated, gathered psychologically, ending everything every day. Not at the end of the day, but at the beginning and the middle and all the time. We say, you understand what that means? Never having roots in any place. Never having a sense of ownership, possession, attachment. So the brain becomes extraordinarily alive, free, and therefore no fear. We said we also would talk about meditation, religion, meditation, and what is creation. Are you interested in that? What is religion? What is the religious mind? What is the mind? We must differentiate. The brain is the storehouse of all memories. It is the seat of all reaction and action, response, both neurologically, psychologically, subjectively. It is contained as consciousness in the brain, right? I'll go on, just play with me, will you? And so the brain is limited, though it has got infinite capacity. As in technological world, look what they're doing. And psychologically, subjectively, we are very limited. That's part of the brain. The mind is something entirely different. The mind is outside the brain. This requires a great deal of inquiry, but perhaps we cannot go on with that because our time is limited. Like love is not within the brain. It's outside. If it is within the brain, it is a process of thought, memory, recollection, remembrances, pleasure, pain, and all that, which is, the brain contains all consciousness. Our consciousness is its content. There is no consciousness as we know it if the content is not. Right? The content is our pain, loneliness, beliefs, faith, hopes, aspirations, anxieties, all that is our consciousness. And that is contained within the skull. So love is not that, surely. Love is not a battleground. Love is not a reaction or a remembrance. And when there's reaction, remembrance and all that, it is still in the brain. And love is, if that, love is still part of the brain, that's reaction, all that, then it's not obviously love. So we're going to investigate together what is religion. Why has man spent such energy, great inquiry, suffered, fasted, tortured himself to find truth, to find that which is timeless? Every religion has done this. That is, every religion says to find that which is immense, immeasurable, you must do certain things. Deny the flesh, control, discipline, give your life, dedicate your life to that. And only then you will find it. They put this very simple statement more complicatedly, but that is what religions have said. And in the Christian world, as in the Hindu and the Buddhist world and the Islamic world, a figure, a symbol, in the mysteries of a not too light a place, cathedrals and churches, with all the rituals, accepting, obeying, all that is called religion. Agree? Is that religion? Or religion is something entirely different? Now we have intermediaries, the priest, between that highest and so-called the lowest. He is the interpreter, like the psychiatrist. And the priest has played a great part in history, from the Egyptians and before the Egyptians, Sumerians and so on. The priests were the learned people and all that. And they have established certain laws, rules. And if you are skeptical, and I hope you are, doubting, questioning, never accepting anything psychologically except the policeman, and the tax laws. Otherwise, to question, doubt, never psychologically obey without going into it. Not belonging to any sect, to any guru, to any organized religion, that Christianity, Islam, or not so organized, rather disorderly Hinduism, and so on. If you put all that aside, if you can, because we are heavily conditioned by propaganda of 2,000 years, or heavily made your brain programmed to 3,000 to 5,000 years as in India and so on. If you can put all that aside, as one must, if one wants to find that which is nameless. Then what is religion? What is the quality of a mind or brain that has totally set aside all man's endeavor to find that? All his systems, methods, his systems of meditation, breathing correctly, cross-legged, you know all that. Those are all meaningless. To calm the brain, to breathe properly, quietly, sit in silence, in a room or under a tree. That will not bring about that which is immense. So what is the quality of a mind, of a brain, that has set aside all this? It is untrammeled, which has not any bondage, which is free, completely free. That word freedom also has its root, etymologically, love. Freedom means love also. Not sexual love, love. So, is that possible when all the world is shouting, when all the world is being entertained by religions? Is that possible to live in this world daily with such total freedom from all tradition, from all knowledge, except where knowledge is necessary? We're asking a really very, very difficult question. Because knowledge prevents that which is, prevents us true perception. From that arises what is meditation. Not how to meditate. That word, meditation, and all the implications with that word, apart from contemplation of Christians and so on, that meditation has been brought over by the gurus into this country, or spreading all over America and so on. They have their systems, their practices, their disciplines, and the guru gets a lot of money out of it, and all that business goes on. There are Hindu meditations, Tibetan meditation, schools of meditation, right? Zen, the whole lot of them. What are they offering? What is meditation? Not how to meditate or what system to follow. That's too immature, too childish. But if you ask deeply, what is it to meditate? Why should one meditate? The word meditation also, etymologically and in Sanskrit, means measure. Not only to ponder over, to think over, which is part of meditation, but also it means understand measurement. Measurement means comparison. Now I'm saying, the speaker is saying, Where there is comparison, there is no meditation. You understand? Okay. Are we following a little bit with each other? We're always measuring. The better, the more. The less and the greater. This whole movement of measurement, which is comparison, can that completely end? Both psychologically and outwardly. That's part of meditation. That's what, when you are inquiring into what is meditation, it means not only think, ponder over, look and observe, but also it means complete ending of all comparison. Short, tall, broad, wide, beautiful, not beautiful. All those are a pattern of the self. Where there is measurement, there is self. Right? So is it possible to live the life in daily life without any form of comparison? Then you will see for yourself the extraordinary quality of the brain. Then the brain itself has its own movement. Apart from its own movement, it has another quality. Then it's extraordinarily stable, firm. Doesn't mean it doesn't yield, but it yields in firmness, in strength. And meditation also means the freedom from the network of words and thought. So that the brain is not entangled with words, with patterns, with systems, with measurement. Then there is absolute silence. And that silence is necessary. Silence has its own sound. Oh, come on. Have you ever listened to a tree? This is not some crazy question. Have you ever listened to a tree, which is an old tree, when the wind and the breezes have come to an end, and the tree is utterly silent. No leaf is fluttering. And then you listen to the sound of the tree. We were asked that question by a scientist. He accepted that, so you better accept it too. Because you will love scientists, people who accumulate knowledge. But to find out the sound in silence. And where there is this complete, absolute, not relative silence, the relative silence can be brought about through thought, through will, saying, I must be silent. That's not silence at all. There is silence only when there is freedom. the things that man has accumulated. In that silence, with the enormous sense of vastness, immensity, you don't ask any questions anymore. It is. Then we ought to ask also a question: what is creation? If we say God created the world, then that's the end of it. That's one of the convenient statements in various books. That's no answer. But if one begins to ask what is creation, how has all this come into being? The tiger, the deer, the marvelous tree, and the majestic mountains, and the great rivers of the world, and this vast population. How does it all this happen? We must distinguish between creation and invention. Creation is totally different from invention. Invention is still within the field of knowledge. The man who invented the jet, he moved from knowledge to knowledge. He invented all the new inventions. The technological world is based on knowledge. Perhaps a second of not thinking and then something comes, but it's still within the area of knowledge. Creation is not invention. Creation is there only when knowledge has come to an end. You understand all this? Then that creation is, if we can use that word, nothing. Nothing means not a thing. A thing is, Latin so on, is thought. When there is absolute silence of thought, then there is totally a different dimension. May we get up, please?